And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, March 4th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we are going to start off the show. We are going to talk about the top free agent quarterbacks, and I'm going to tell you what teams I think they will end up on. I'm probably not going to be right, but I will give you at least an early prediction here as to where they could land now with the Matthew Stafford situation being put away. We'll talk about LeBron James. We talked about him yesterday, but he is 1 point shy of getting to 50,000 points. He'll be the first player to ever do that, combined between the regular season and the postseason, so we'll get into that. We'll also talk about the Sixers. They did officially shut down Joel Embiid. That was made news last week, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Yankees as their injury woes continue, as Luis Gil, their Rookie of the Year winner from last year, AL Rookie of the Year winner, he will be out. He's being shut down for 6 weeks due to a lat strain. So we'll talk about the impact of that. And then I will continue my season overviews. I almost said schedule overviews. Season overviews from each team in the NFL. And today we will be talking about the Atlanta Falcons. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the top free agents, the top quarterback free agents. Now, one thing I did want to bring up is T. Higgins did officially got franchise tagged by the Bengals. And I know last week we talked about him likely being franchise tagged. Well, now that was made official, and he tweeted about it. He just tweeted tagged on his his X account. Sorry. So, so that was made official. And now we'll see if the Bengals can agree to a long-term deal. But this is what I wanted to get into. So the Matthew Stafford situation we can now put behind us. He now has a new deal with the Rams. We don't know what the specifics are yet, and once we do, we'll talk about that. But basically, the free agents that I wanted to talk about are Aaron Rodgers, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and Sam Darnold. Those are the top quarterback free agents. Now, there's a bunch of other quarterbacks that we could throw in. Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz is a free agent. There are a lot of quarterback free agents out there. But these are the top guys. And where are they going to end up? Now, I think the one that's very easy to predict right now, the way things are kind of trending, is I do believe that Justin Fields will end up back with the Steelers. I think that's the way things are kind of going. Now, they're still in contact with Russell Wilson. And originally, I think we all thought that door was shut. But I guess they're still in contact with Russ. I think the Steelers should go and bring Fields back, because Fields really didn't do that bad before Russ took over. Now, I think, in terms of arm talent and as a passer, I guess Russ probably did a little bit better, but when you look at where these two guys are currently at in their careers, we still don't really know. We haven't seen the true potential of Justin Fields yet. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to be Lamar Jackson, but we saw early on last season when he was with the Steelers, in a better system, he did okay. And the Steelers probably would still make the playoffs if Fields was the starter. Now, there were some games that you just shake your head, like the Cowboys game that they lost. He wasn't great. Although, the game started late, what have you. You could point to other reasons why the Steelers lost, but yeah, I just remember he wasn't great in that game. But, he got the Steelers out to a good record. And they should have continued with him. But Mike Tomlin went to Russ. Russ was going to be the starter regardless, and it looked good until the end of the year, where the Steelers did not win a single game. Final 5 games they lost, including the playoffs. But I do think that's the most likely spot for Fields, as he ends up with the Steelers. Now, the Jets supposedly are in on Fields, and there's a connection there. You got Garrett Wilson there. But I feel like the Steelers, unless the Jets offer him more money and completely blows the Steelers' offer out of the water, I think Justin Fields will ultimately end up with the Steelers. And the Steelers want to get a deal done soon, because if they don't, then, not just the Steelers and the Jets, but there could be other teams out there that could be looking to bring Fields in. But I think he's going to end up with the Steelers. And if not, then, maybe Russ goes back there. Now, speaking of Russ, let's talk about him. So, like I said, the Steelers supposedly are still in contact with Russ, but I think Fields is going to go back. I do think it's going to come down to either the Raiders or the Giants when it comes to Russ. Because if you remember last year, before Russ signed with the Steelers, he visited the Giants. And the Giants were a potential fit for him. Because the Giants wanted to bring in more competition to compete with Daniel Jones. And they ended up opting to sign Drew Lock. But Russ could have been a Giant last year. So it's possible that the Giants, they could take a quarterback, but they could also sign Russ. Now, I'm going to say he's not going to go to the Giants, though. Even though there's definitely a possibility it could happen. I think he could end up with the Raiders. Now, the Raiders, they were in on Stafford. They really wanted Stafford, just like the Giants did. They missed out on him. But now that Stafford's gone, they're turning to Russ. They're turning to Sam Darnold. Now, I think, if you're the Raiders, are you really going to want to pay Sam Darnold a big contract? Are you going to want to do that? And I think with Tom Brady and Pete Carroll there, I think they know what Sam Darnold is. And I don't think that they're going to pay Sam Darnold this huge contract. The Vikings also didn't franchise tag him, so he is a free agent. He's going to be a free agent. And Russ would be a cheap option, and then maybe you go and you draft a young quarterback. And I keep saying this, Pete Carroll wants to win games next year. And I think Russ could still win you games. Now, you're in a very tough division. You might not be a playoff team, but at least you'll kind of get the ball rolling. And with Russ, you could be somewhat competitive. And then, with the young quarterback, if they are able to get one, they sit behind Russ for a year, and they can go to him the following season, and then they'll be an even better team in year 2 with Pete Carroll and this new regime. So, and also, look, the Russell Wilson-Pete Carroll connection. That's the other reason why I would say Russ going to Vegas makes sense. And it was talked about, and Pete Carroll didn't completely dismiss it. You want to keep the doors open. They tried to get Stafford. They ended up not getting him. So, maybe they go with Russ for a year, you draft a young quarterback, and then you go from there. So, I got Russ going to Vegas. Now we get to the Giants. It's not as crazy as many people may think, but I think Aaron Rodgers to the Giants does make sense. And I've said this before, because we have talked about this before, but you got a regime that is very desperate to win. And in my opinion, I think of all the quarterbacks that are available, I think Aaron Rodgers is the guy that gives you the best chance to win. Out of the quarterbacks that are available, that are on the free agent market. Now, if Matthew Stafford was still available, I would say Stafford. But the Giants are desperate. And this would be, you could look at it as a desperation move. But if the Giants draft a quarterback, then it makes even more sense. Because you could try to win next year, even though I don't really think it's going to happen. And you have the young quarterback sit behind Rodgers for a year. And then, if Rodgers retires, then you go to the young quarterback. Ideally, that's what I think the Giants would be hoping for, as my camera continues to bug out. Ideally, that's what you're kind of hoping for. Now, I think it would make sense. Like I said, it would make sense. Giants need to win. Rodgers, not just from a football standpoint, but he wants to continue playing, but he also really likes the New Jersey, New York area. And maybe he doesn't want to relocate. And if you look at the Giants might not be close, but I don't think we should just say that they have no talent on their team, right? They have talent. It's just last year was a disaster. The quarterback situation was a disaster. And I think if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and let's say they bring in Devontae Adams, you have Devontae Adams and Malik Neighbors. You got two very good receivers. Tyrone Tracy, a 5th-round pick last year out of Purdue, was decent running the football. The offensive line was holding up until Andrew Thomas got hurt. So the offensive line was better with the healthy Andrew Thomas. Now, if Andrew Thomas gets hurt and you have Aaron Rodgers, well, the offensive line is not going to be able to protect him. So there's that. And the defense has some good players. And maybe they go and they draft Travis Hunter, and he can play receiver and corner, which secondary help is what the Giants need. So maybe it happens. But I don't see him ending up in Vegas. The Titans, the Colts maybe. The Colts is a possibility for some of these quarterbacks because they want to bring in competition for Anthony Richardson. But I could either see Russ or Aaron Rodgers ending up with the Giants. And then finally, we get to Sam Darnold. Now, you might be a little bit surprised by what I'm about to say, but I do think that Sam Darnold is going to end up with the Vikings again. I'm going to make that prediction. Because I just think, unless you're really desperate, which, the Giants are desperate, but I don't even think the Giants are you really going to give Sam Darnold a $40 million contract? Are you really going to do that? I don't think you should. I think, and the Vikings are not franchise tagging him, which I don't blame them. I think he's eventually going. He's going to test the market, and he's going to end up going back to the Vikings, because I think he should realize, the Vikings. This is a great situation that I was put in. Am I really going to leave it and go elsewhere and then risk, my numbers going down and not being the same player that I was in 2024? Because if he goes to the Titans, he goes to the Raiders, he goes to the Giants, he's not going to do as good. And the Vikings were smart. They handled the Kirk Cousins negotiations right. So that's kind of how I look at it. They let the Vikings let Kirk Cousins walk. They have no problems letting Sam Darnold walk. They have J.J. McCarthy waiting. Now, I could be wrong, but I think they'll bring Sam Darnold back. He's gonna realize. I think he's gonna realize that teams are not gonna be interested in giving him a big contract. I don't see him going to New York because he doesn't want to go to New York. Vegas is a possibility, but I think he should stay with the Vikings. Or maybe he goes to the Colts. Maybe he goes to the Titans. But the Vikings, I think, gives him the best chance to win. And I think asking price, his market's not going to be there. It's going to go down. His asking price is going to go down. Vikings will come in. They'll give him a new deal that works for both of them. And then we go from there. So that's what I think. But let me know what you guys think. Where do you think these quarterbacks will end up? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break. When we come back, we will talk about LeBron James and him nearing 50,000 points. And we'll talk about that achievement. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about LeBron James, as he is 1 point shy of 50,000 career points. And he's continuing to defy the odds at age 40, putting together another solid season. As the Lakers, they're playing really good, working their way up the Western Conference standings, although right now they're the 2 seed, and that's probably as far as they're going to get. They're not going to catch the Thunder. But, I mean, the 2 seed is still very good. But we talked a little bit about this yesterday, going through all the NBA stuff. But, like I said, he is continuing to defy the odds at now 40. And, you know, he's talked about this. You know, he's nearing the end. You know, he talked about how long he could play. And, you know, we're down to maybe the last, 2 to 3 years, maybe 2 years of his career, and then he's going to call it. But he could keep going. You know, and we've had these conversations in our production meeting, and how he could play till, some people are saying he could play till he's 50. I don't know if I go that far, but I think he could do what Tom Brady did. You know, play till, you're 45, and then you call it. Now, what Brady did was he retired, and then he came back, and he probably should have just retired after the 2021 season, because he was an MVP candidate. You know, the Bucks, they made it to the second round of the playoffs, and they almost pulled off that comeback against the Rams. And then he retired, but then he came back, and the Bucks really weren't that good. Now, it wasn't all on him, but, it wasn't as good of a season as the previous year. And then you go out, your last game, you lose to Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Now, I don't think it's going to happen with LeBron. I think LeBron's going to call it, and that's it. He's not coming back. But that's just me saying that. But it really just is impressive what he's able to do. And also in our production meetings, we've also had these conversations before about, playing into your 40s. And why some players are able to do it. And why others aren't following in their footsteps. So they can continue to play as they get older and get into their 40s. Well, it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. You got to change up your diet. You really got to commit to it. It's a commitment. And some players, and, it's not just dieting, but we'll talk about another player in the next segment who just continues to get hurt and, now is going to be shut down for the rest of the year. But, Anyways, yeah, it takes a lot. I mean, I don't know the specifics, but you could tell that there's a lot that goes into it to keep your body in the right shape. And also, you got to be a very good player. And LeBron James is an all-time great. Tom Brady's an all-time great. A lot of these guys that, are just starting out or are into their careers, but, some of them aren't going to go into their 40s because you know what? They're not as great as these players. You also got to be able to play. That's the other thing too. But this is nearing 50,000 points. He's going to be the first player to do that. And you look at going down because there was a chart I was looking at. So LeBron right now is at 1 point shy. So he has over 41. He almost has 42,000 points in the regular season, and then he has a little over 8,000 points in the postseason. And then the next closest player is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is at 38,000 points in the regular season, and then almost 6,000 points in the postseason. Then you got Karl Malone, almost 37,000 points in the regular season, and then almost 5,000 points in the postseason. He's at almost 42,000 in total. Kobe Bryant is at 33,000 in the regular season, and then 5,600 in the postseason. He's at 39,000. And then you got Michael Jordan after that, Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Durant, Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq, Tim Duncan, and so on and so forth. And LeBron also has been playing for a long time. I mean, you got to remember, he came into the NBA straight out of high school. And this season with the Lakers, he's averaging 24.8 points per game. And he got off to a slow start, too. Like, I remember one of my friends, I don't know if he was joking or being serious, but he's like, this is where LeBron begins to fall off. Well, not so fast. And he's a big LeBron guy. Not so fast. LeBron is still doing it. And now, on top of that, you bring in Luka, and that takes a lot of pressure off of LeBron. It does. Because Luka's a guy that could drop, we've seen him drop, 30 points now with the Lakers. But, he could drop 40, he could drop 50. The other night, what did he have? He had around 30 points. LeBron had 17. LeBron at times could take a little bit of a backseat. And that could add more years to his career. Lakers are playing some really good basketball right now. And it'd be interesting if they go on a finals run and if they ended up winning it. Would LeBron just say, I'm done now? I could retire on a high note. I don't know. But they're playing some really good basketball right now, and him and Luka are at the forefront. And the players around them, Austin Reeves and Hachimura, but those guys are dealing with injuries right now, so hopefully, you get all of them back. But nothing is too significant. Jackson Hayes, we've been talking about him in our production meeting and how he's been playing. So, and Dalton Connect, I saw he had 19 points the other night off the bench. It's a good Lakers team. And actually, we got to talk about the Mavericks, but quick update on them. So, Kyrie Irving got hurt last night, and they said it was a knee sprain, but my friend just said it. I think it's confirmed that he might have a torn ACL. I'm trying to see if I could find it, but my friend just said ACL confirmed. We will talk about the Mavericks tomorrow because what has happened since that Luka trade, they've gone in the complete opposite direction since the Luka trade. Oh, yep, so here it is. So Shams has reported that Kyrie Irving has suffered a season-ending torn ACL in his left knee. It is confirmed. And that is a devastating blow to the Mavericks. And right now it's just Klay Thompson now. Because Gafford, Lively, they're hurt. Anthony Davis is still hurt. Now Kyrie Irving is hurt. So we'll get into that tomorrow. But that is just... That's not what you want. That's not what you want. And they lost last night to the Kings, so it wouldn't surprise me if they just completely fall out of the playoff picture. But talk about a trade that has gone in the complete opposite direction for a team. But are you really surprised, though? Are you surprised? I know I'm not. But that's what the Mavericks decided to do. Mavericks fans got to be up in arms about that. But anyways, so the Lakers, they're playing tonight, I believe. They didn't play last night. They're playing tonight. They are going up against the Pelicans. So 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. They're 8.5-point favorites against the Pelicans. LeBron's going to do it tonight. We'll see history being made. So make sure to tune in for that. And then we'll kind of go through the other NBA action, actually. So Rockets and Pacers play tonight. That should be a good game. You got the Raptors and the Magic. I don't know why I keep saying Mavericks and getting Magic and Mavericks confused. Whatever. Raptors and Magic. Not that great. The Bucks and the Hawks. Got the Warriors and the Knicks tonight. That should be a good game. Got the Cavs and the Bulls. The Sixers. We'll talk about them in a second. Well, in the next segment. Sixers against the Timberwolves, the Nets against the Spurs, and then you got the Clippers and the Suns. So that's your NBA action tonight. LeBron James, he will get 50,000 points. So make sure to tune in for that. But let me know what you guys think about LeBron getting to 50,000 points. Let me know what your thoughts are on that in the comments. Before we go to break, though, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Joel Embiid, as the 76ers have officially shut him down for the season, and we will talk about what's next for them and Embiid. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about Joel Embiid officially being shut down for the season by the Sixers. And we talked a little bit about the Sixers and Joel Embiid on a previous show, but yeah, it's just what a forgettable season for the Sixers. Embiid really has not played that much this year. The Sixers, I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs. I mean, they still have kind of a chance to make the play-in, but I've said it. I mean, at that point, what are you really playing for? And at this point, a lot of people are saying that they should tank just lose on purpose, which I don't think they're going to try to do. But right now they're 21-39. They are now 1-9 in their last 10 games. And like I said, they still have kind of a chance to make the play-in. They're 2.5 games back, but that just shows you how bad the Eastern Conference is once you get past, the Pistons, because there's not a single team that has a winning record that's in the play-in right now. And that's why, the play-in that's one of the things that you can criticize the play-in for, is now you got teams making the playoffs technically that shouldn't technically be in. I mean, in the Western Conference is different because every team that's in the play-in is over 500. But yeah, once you get past the Pistons, everybody's under 500. But yeah, the Sixers, they're not making it. They will not be making it. And, doing some reading last night, there was one article that I was looking at on The Athletic, and they talked about how, that the 76ers could take, the Grizzlies approach, where you had, John Morant, their star player, go down last year. A ton of injuries, not just to him, but to a lot of guys on the team. And, essentially, they ended up getting a decent pick. They drafted Zach Edey out of Purdue, and now he's a starter. And now look at them. They're one of the top teams in the West. Now, I think it's easier said than done. But, they're talking about, hey, you shut down Embiid, you shut down Paul George. Tyrese Maxey also got hurt, but, he got slammed against the ground, but it's hurt his back, I believe, but not too serious. But, if you shut down, Paul George too, and you just let the season play out, you lose all the games, you got a better chance of getting a higher draft pick. Then you could draft an impact player. You get Embiid back healthy next year, and you'll be back to being the Sixers team you usually are in the regular season. Now, like I said, that's easier said than done. And the other thing, too, is, I get where they're coming from, but also, who's to say Embiid's not going to get hurt again? John Morant, to my knowledge, does not have the injury issues that, also, he's much younger than Embiid. But now he had some other issues, off the court issues that we won't get into, but he is also a young player. Embiid's older, and Embiid is injury prone. So Embiid you could draft an impact player in this upcoming NBA draft, but then Embiid could get hurt next year. And then what? That's my pushback on that logic. I think, though, maybe you consider going into a rebuild. You just break it all down. Well, not get rid of Tyrese Maxey and some of the other players, but, older players like Paul George, it just didn't work out. Paul George has not had a good year. And, he made comments on his podcast that he wasn't going to do his podcast because, he wanted to focus on this season. I mean, there's really nothing to focus on now because they're not going anywhere. Now, what's interesting is, you look at Embiid's contract. So, next season, he's owed $55 million. The 2026-2027 season, he's owed $59.5 million. $64.3 million in the 2027-2028 season, and then $69.1 million in the 2028-2029 season. So in total, over the next 4 seasons, by the way, all guaranteed, he is owed $248 million. And he has missed a lot of time due to injury. Now, the only way that the Sixers could really get out of this deal is if they deem his injuries to be career-ending injuries. And they can get out of his contract. But I don't know if that's going to happen. And, he's not going to walk away. That's a lot of money. We talk about, Embiid should retire. Yeah, maybe he should, but he's not going to. That's a lot of money that you're leaving on the table, and it's all guaranteed. And his knee injury right now is to the same knee that he had another surgery on, another previous surgery. So it's unfortunate because he is a very good player when he's on the court. You know, he played hurt in the playoffs last year against the Knicks, and he still was playing great. But he can't stay healthy. Now, this is kind of how his season went. So, he had a delayed start to training camp. He made his debut on November 12th against the Knicks. The Sixers were 2-8 before he came back. Now, they started to play better. They had a big win over the Celtics on Christmas. They were at 14-19, their record was, on January 4th. But then he got hurt again, missed a month with the foot and knee issues. Then he returned exactly a month ago, February 4th. They didn't win another game. And they've just gone on these massive losing streaks. I mean, I just told you, 1-9 in their last 10 games. But they have struggled. And injuries have played a part in it. And guys have just underperformed. So right now, how I have it here, they have the 6th worst record in the NBA. Now, to get a top 6 pick, they have a 46% chance of getting a top 6 pick. They have a 64% chance of getting the number 5 spot. And then they have an 81% chance of getting the number 4 spot. So, and the other thing too is their first rounder could end up going to, I believe it could end up going to the Thunder if it's not within the top 5 or the top 6. They could end up losing their first round pick. So if they tank and they get, a top 5, top 6 pick, that'll be theirs. And they kind of need it because of the year that they're having right now. So if it's top 6, it'll be protected. They'll keep it. That's kind of how it works. I'm kind of new to talking about the NBA draft picks and how they work because with the NFL it's not like that. They don't have a lottery system and they but that's just how it is at the moment. So but yeah. No, it's it is interesting what the Sixers could do. I mean, they're probably going to finish with that kind of pick anyways. I mean, they might not tell you that they're tanking, or they might not want to tank, but they're not a very good team. They're just not. And this contract you look at for Joel Embiid is just, it's not looking good. And who's going to take on that contract? Let's say they try to trade him. Is anyone going to take that? No. I mean, maybe, but he can't stay healthy. That has been his problem for years now. Misses time. I mean, even during the Olympics, he's playing with a knee brace. And when he does play, he's playing hurt. So, it's tough. It's a tough situation. The Sixers, this has just been, like I said, to start off the segment, it's a forgettable season. I did not expect the Sixers to be this bad. I expected them to be in the top 6 in the Eastern Conference, not, picking in the top 6 in the upcoming NBA draft. But they've gone backwards. And maybe this is just a fluke year with the injuries, but maybe it won't be. Right now they have the same record as the Nets. 21-39. Did you think that was going to be the case going into the season? I don't think so. And you look at some of the other players. Tyrese Maxey is having another great year. He's averaging 26 points per game. But you look at Paul George. Paul George is averaging 16. Is that what you expected going into the year? You go back to, what were his stats last year? Last year was 19 and a half. Then he had 23.8 points. The year before, 24.3 points. Yeah, his numbers have gone down. You brought in Paul George to kind of be that, that third option. Now, I mean, I guess, if Joel Embiid is playing the whole year, maybe you'll live with it. But now he's kind of turned into the number 2 option with Embiid being hurt. So, yeah, it's just, we'll see what happens. But we still got a month to go left in the season, so Sixers fans are just going to have to, deal with it. But it's going to be interesting what they do and where they end up picking in the NBA draft. We'll find out. But let me know what you guys think about the Embiid situation. So we are going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about more injuries. We'll switch over to baseball now. We'll talk about the Yankees as another one of their pitchers has now gotten hurt in the starting rotation. And it's a big injury, and we will talk about it when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now talk about more injury news with the New York Yankees as the reigning AL Rookie of the Year, Luis Gil, will be out for an extended period of time. He's going to be shut down for 6 weeks with a latch strain, and it's not the first time that a Yankees pitcher has had to deal with a latch strain in recent years, as Clark Schmidt dealt with the same kind of injury last year. But he's going to be shut down. He won't throw for 6 weeks, and then they'll re-examine him and go from there. So you're looking at, right now, 6 weeks. So that takes us into April. And then, who knows? I mean, May, June, he comes back? Late May, early June? That's kind of how I see it. This is a big deal. And it's a high latch strain. Aaron Boone said they're still gathering information. It's at least a 6-week no-throw. We know that for sure, but he's still got to be examined by the doctor and then get the other opinions on everything there. So now what that does is it slides Marcus Stroman back into the rotation, and he pitched the other day against the Braves, and he was not good. He he gave up back-to-back home runs to the Braves 3 and 4 hitters, and the Braves are going to be good again. Now, you could sit here and say, well, it's spring training and pitchers are working through things. I get it, but I don't know. I think Stroman coming back into the rotation, it's not going to go well. But maybe he pitches well up until Hill comes back, and then, we'll go from there. But looking at Luis Gil's stats, in 29 starts last season, he had a 3.5 ERA, a 1.19 WHIP, with 171 strikeouts and 77 walks and 151.2 innings pitched. I said 0.2. And 2/3 innings pitched. Don't say the decimal point. And then he pitched in the postseason, and he pitched to an ERA that was to almost 7 between the Guardians and the Dodgers. So, yeah, I mean, he got off to a great start, struggled a little bit, never really recaptured, never really captured his, early season start momentum. guess I was trying to say. But, still put together a good season. And he was Garrett Cole's replacement because Garrett Cole was hurt. We didn't know if Garrett Cole was going to come back or when he was going to come back. But Luis Gil stepped in and did a very nice job. So now you look at the rotation. I think the rotation is going to be fine. I don't think the Yankees can afford another injury, though, to the rotation, because then you really got to start dipping into your depth, and they don't have the greatest depth behind their starting 5 or their starting 6, because, hey, at least you could plug in Stroman, but now if you get another injury, well, there's Will Warren, there's Carlos Carrasco, who pitched last night, so you don't want to see the Yankees get another injury to the rotation. I do worry about Clark Schmidt because of last year. Garrett Cole, I worry about. Over the course of a whole season. I mean, everything seems like he's good, but you never know. Carlos Rodon has had an injury history. Max Fried also. So basically, I'm worried about everybody. But it's just amazing how we're still a few weeks away from opening day. And once again, when it comes to the Yankees, they are dealing with a ton of injuries. Now, I think they'll be able to overcome it. But I do worry that we could be heading towards a season like a couple years ago, 2023, where once Aaron Judge got hurt, the season just completely fell apart. Because already they're without Giancarlo Stanton. They got some injuries to the bullpen. Now you got injuries to the rotation. And on top of that, there are so many question marks going into the year. Who's playing third base? Jason Dominguez struggling defensively out in left field, making bad plays. Who's going to be batting leadoff? How are they going to replace Giancarlo Stanton's bat? There's just so many question marks and concerns with this team that it's hard for me to not have my doubts now. Because before all these injuries came up, I was sitting here saying, I still think this team's going to win the division. And they still can. But it's definitely going to be more difficult with these injuries. And you wonder, when does it get to a point where it is too much to overcome? I think it's when Aaron Judge gets hurt. Knock on wood that doesn't happen. But if Aaron Judge gets hurt, then there's a problem. Now, I think the Yankees are going to really have to rely upon their pitching to really come up big over the first part of the season. I think even without Gil, they still have a good enough rotation. As long as that guys stay healthy, they still have a good enough rotation, even with Stroman at the 5, where they can deal with this. They can overcome this Luis Gil injury. And the bullpen, I think, is going to be very good. I think this is going to be one of the best bullpens they've had in years. And they're gonna figure it out, and I think they will make the necessary moves to try to improve this team once we get to the deadline. But that's me being optimistic, and the pessimistic side of me is very nervous going into the year that it's just going to go the other way. But it is a big loss. It is a big loss. The Luis Gil loss is big. The Stanton loss is big. And who knows when we're getting Stanton back. When we'll see Giancarlo Stanton again. I don't know. But I think they got to be very careful with him. Get him ready for October, everybody is saying. But you would like to see him back before October because you can't just plop Stanton into the postseason lineup. First, they got to get to the postseason. If they're in the postseason and Stanton hasn't played all year and you just throw him in October, well, you're going to have what you had with Matt Carpenter a few years ago, where he got hurt and then they just he missed a lot of time after he went on his miracle run, and then he comes back, they throw him in the postseason lineup and he couldn't get a hit. You got to have these guys playing games before the postseason. So I think the Yankees will get Stanton back at some point, but it's going to be a while. And it's not like the Yankees haven't dealt with injuries before. But you've seen it both ways. They've had years where they've had a ton of injuries, and they go on and they win over 100 games. That was back in 2019. But then you have them deal with a ton of injuries in 2023, and they end up going 82-80. So, and I feel like it's going to be, I feel like if there are a ton of injuries and we see, more key guys getting hurt, you are going to see a team more so to the 82-80 team as opposed to the team that won over 100 games in 2019. That's just how I see it, because the depth is not great. Last year, even look at last year. They had to go out and get J.D. Davis. They had Jahmai Jones getting at bats. These are the Yankees, as the old school fans are going to say. They can't. How do you have Jahmai Jones and J.D. Davis? Well, look at this year. Dominic Smith could find his way. Remember Dom Smith? Used to play for the Mets. Was on the Red Sox. I think he was on. Where was he recently? I think he was on the Nationals. But Dom Smith could be getting at bats. That's where the Yankees are at right now, because some of their prospects might not necessarily be ready. George Lombard Jr., he's been looking good in the spring. I think he's only 19. Has had a couple of home runs. Spencer Jones, he's not ready yet. That's why they got to go and get a Dom Smith. That's why they're talking to a JD Martinez. Because some of these guys are just not ready. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you're dealing with injuries. And both New York teams are dealing with it right now. The Mets with their pitching woes as well. Some of their pitchers are hurt. You can't just go into the year healthy. Injuries, part of every sport. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the Yankees the season's over. Because I know there's some people that are claiming that. Also DJ LeMahieu getting hurt. Tweaked the calf muscle. And people are like, oh, I can't believe this. Well, I can. Because that's what's happened. DJ LeMahieu cannot stay healthy. And they say, oh, it's not a big deal. He'll be back. I don't think so. Because even if he does come back, he's going to get hurt again. And that contract has also aged very poorly. And I'll admit, as a Yankee fan, wanted DJ LeMahieu back because he was very good his first 2 seasons. But he fell off after he got the contract. Now, I don't correlate with him getting paid and then his production just declines. I think that just happened. I don't think he was one of those guys that was like, oh, I got paid, I don't have to try anymore. No, I just think he just declined. And as Yankee fans, it was not something that a lot of people saw coming. But that's what happened. So, yeah, I mean, look, a lot of fans are not going to have sympathy for the Yankees. They're not. A lot of people will be happy about this, that the Yankees are going through it. But let them doubt the Yankees. It's fine. That's fine. And then it'll go like 2023 did. And they don't even make the playoffs. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't think it's time to panic. I do think if you see like Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge both get hurt and you lose both of them on top of what's already going on, then it's time to panic. But you still got Aaron Judge, who is the best player in baseball. You got Garrett Cole, one of the best pitchers in baseball. You got a very good bullpen. I think the young players are going to step up. I like what I've seen from some of them in the spring, although Anthony Volpe did drop a pop-up last night, and also Jazz Chisholm misplayed a ball in the infield. So already I was saying to myself, oh, so here we go. We're picking up where we left off with this team last year in the World Series. So, and I think the other moves that they made are going to pay off. But there are ifs going into the year. And I think it was similar to last year where there were also a lot of ifs, but, they paid off. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I think it's the same thing here. Same thing applies here. So we'll see what happens. But let me know what you guys think about the injury to Luis Heel. How big of a deal is that? I think the Yankees will be able to overcome it. But they also can't afford more injuries. So we are going to take our final break of the show now. And when we come back, we will do a season overview on the Atlanta Falcons and what they have to do to improve their team going into the 2025 season. So for one final time today, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to do a season overview on the Atlanta Falcons and what they have to do to improve for 2025. So, the biggest thing going into the season was the fact that they signed Kirk Cousins, gave him a $180 million contract, with $100 million guaranteed, a 4-year contract. And then they went and drafted Michael Penix with their, I think it was the 9th pick in the draft. And they were widely criticized for it. Now, the Falcons, they started off the year good. They were in first place. They swept the season series with the Buccaneers, and that was really the team that they were competing with because, the Saints fell off and the Panthers were not good until they picked things up, and then they beat the Falcons to give them no chance of making the playoffs. But they did get off to a good start. But, and Kirk Cousins was inconsistent. And he also, was coming off of a major injury. And he had some good games, mainly against the Buccaneers. If you take out those 2 games against the Buccaneers, his stats are even worse than what they are. He finished with 18 touchdowns and 16 picks. Now, he didn't play the last, quarter of the season, basically, because he ended up getting benched. But you take out those 2 Buccaneers games, and his season was even worse. He threw for 500 yards in one game. I thought, you go back to week 2, because also he had that game-winning drive against the Eagles when Saquon dropped the 3rd down and the Eagles, kicked the field goal. And, then the Falcons went the length of the field. Or, no, did they kick a field goal? Either way, Falcons went the length of the field, scored a touchdown. They ended up winning by a point. And then you had the game where Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards against the Bucs, and you're like, all right, Kirk is back. But then all of a sudden, things just went on a downward spiral from there. Now, he did say in a recent interview that, he hurt his shoulder against the Saints, because the Saints ended up upsetting the Falcons later in the season, and that might have caused Kirk Cousins' play to fall off, because like I said, they were They were 6-3 before that loss to the Saints. Things were looking good for them. They came off of a win against the Cowboys. Although even before that, though, I'm looking back at their games. You ended up losing to the Seahawks by 3 scores, and Kirk Cousins threw a couple of picks in that game. I think he also lost a fumble in that game. Yeah, he did. So he turned the ball over 3 times. But so I was still waiting for that consistency even before, that Saints game. But then, they go to New Orleans. They play against the Saints. They still had an opportunity to win that game. Sorry, I didn't realize my camera turned off. But they end up losing. And then they got blown out by the Broncos, 38-6. Then there was a bye week. Then they came back against the Chargers, and Kirk threw 4 picks in the game. 4 picks, and some of them were really bad. I don't have to go through it because I say the same thing every time I talk about him. Then they got blown out by the Vikings, and then a win against the Raiders. They went 15-9, and he threw for 112 yards. He went 11-17, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And he did have a fumble, but he didn't lose it. And the Falcons, they ran the ball 37 times. So they relied on their running game and their defense also came up big because also Desmond Ridder played. So they should have won that, and they did. But then they said, you know what? We're going to put in Michael Penix. And Michael Penix, in the 3 games that he played, 3 touchdowns to 3 picks. He had 775 passing yards. And he did flash some potential there. And I really am curious to see what he's going to do over a full season now as a starter. Because now, as of right now, you have Kirk Cousins making all this money, and he's going to be the backup. But Penix, in the 3 games that the 3 full games that he did play in against the Giants, he only threw for 200 yards. He didn't have a touchdown. He had an interception in the game. But the Falcons blew them out. I mean, I think they had 2 pick sixes in the game off of Drew Lock. It was never really close. Washington, he had that 4th down conversion to Kyle Pitts for the touchdown to send it into overtime. Went 19-35 for 223 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And then, I guess his best game was against the Panthers. He had 312 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Went 21-38. But you did see the Falcons looked like a different offense when they made the change. And Bijan Robinson put together a very good season. He had 1,456 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. Stud running back, one of the best running backs in the league. Drake London had his best season. He had 9 touchdowns. He had 100 receptions. He had 1,271 receiving yards. Darnell Mooney was productive for them. He had almost 1,000 yards. He had 5 touchdowns. Kyle Pitts had 4 touchdowns, only 602 receiving yards. They're looking for him to maybe break out next year, but I feel like we've been saying that every single year with Kyle Pitts. At some point, when is it going to happen? And I don't think Kyle Pitts is a bad player, but I don't think he's what many people thought he was going to be. Now, when it comes to what the Falcons got to do this offseason, I think defense is one area that needs to be addressed. I think the front 7 definitely needs some work. The Falcons' defense was not very good last year. It was kind of, I wouldn't say it was like awful, but I feel like it was kind of like a middle of the pack defense. I think they need to add to that front 7, like I said. Quarterback, they're fine for now, unless, they find out Penix isn't the guy, but we'll see. Running back, they're fine. I think maybe you could add another pass catcher. Maybe they add another receiver. Ray McCloud was their number 3 receiver. And then they also had Cordero Hodge. I think you could add another playmaker. Maybe offensive line. Although I was looking at their cap space. They don't really have a lot of cap space, the Falcons. They got to restructure some contracts. Because I was looking at it, and I went to overthecap.com, which is what everybody probably does. But the Falcons right now, they have I don't know if it's, well, actually, they might be $5 million over the cap. But yeah, I mean, you got Kirk Cousins making a lot of money. His cap number's $40 million. Then you got Jesse Bates in the secondary. He's making $22 million. Chris Lindstrom on the offensive line is making $22 million. Jake Matthews is making $21 million. Grady Jarrett, $20 million. AJ Terrell, $19 million. David Onyemata is $16 million. Darnell Mooney's making $14 million. There's a lot of guys making big money on this team. So I think they're either, I mean, they're going to have to cut some guys maybe, or, I mean, we'll see if they cut Kirk Cousins. You know, or they restructure some guys. But, yeah, the biggest thing is, are they going to cut Kirk Cousins? Now, they keep saying they're going to make him as a backup. Now, I know I did my segment earlier, or at the beginning of the show, with the top free agent quarterbacks and where they could end up. And Kirk Cousins was not included because right now Kirk Cousins is not a free agent. But if Kirk Cousins becomes a free agent, there's going to be a lot of teams that would want to sign him because there's a lot of teams desperate for quarterbacks. That would change a lot of things. You know, because the Jets could be a possibility. Although right now they're saying they'd be comfortable going into the year with Tyrod Taylor, which I like Tyrod as a backup, but as a full-time starter in 2025, I would, as a Jet fan, I'd be like, really? But I don't think there's going to be more than just him on the team. So, but yeah, Kirk Cousins, we'll see if he ends up getting cut. But yeah, if I'm Kirk Cousins, do I really want to be a backup? I want to start. So I think one way or another, Kirk Cousins is going to find his way out of Atlanta. But yeah, I would not have given Kirk Cousins that contract. If I was, now, I shouldn't say that. I would have either done one or the other. You either draft Michael Penix, and then you bring in like another, you know, veteran quarterback on a cheap deal, or you sign Kirk Cousins to that 4-year contract and you commit to him for the 4 years. Now, the way the season went, yeah, that would have been awful. The way, you know, and you wouldn't have gone to Penix. And who knows how the Falcons probably would have, you know, they probably wouldn't have won a single game. Well, actually, no, they probably still beat the Giants. Actually, yeah, never mind. Forget what I said. They probably still end up finishing with the same record. Because after they benched Kirk Cousins, they beat the Giants, they lost to the Commanders, and then, did they lose to the Panthers? I mean, I guess they probably still lose to the Panthers the way Kirk was playing. But, yeah, so they probably still finish 8-9, never mind. But it was very disappointing how they finished off the year. Because you were like, wow, this team might end up, you know, making the playoffs. You know, Kirk's first year, this is looking good, and then his play just fell off. Now, we look at the Falcons' draft situation. So, they currently hold the 8th overall pick in the draft. And then you go on down the list here. So, they have the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. And they got that from the Cardinals. Then they have, I think that was, that might have been was that the the Rondell Moore trade? Might have been. Because you forgot about that because he ended up not playing. Then they have the 10th pick in the 3rd round, the 9th pick in the 4th round, the 8th pick in the 5th round, the 10th pick in the 6th round. They got that from the Vikings through the Cardinals. And then they got 2 6th-round picks. One of them they got from the Browns. So they got 8 picks. I think front 7, offensive line, and you throw in a receiver. I think that's what they're going to do. Now, with the first pick, it's interesting. I think with the first pick, I think they'll go with someone defensively. And then maybe in the 2nd round, they go and they draft a receiver. Maybe. But we'll see. Look, this is a very winnable division. It's going to be better next year. Because I think the Panthers are going to be better. The Saints, you know, might be the last place team with how everything's going. And then you got the Bucs. I think the top 2 teams are still the Bucs and the Falcons. And we'll see, you know, how Michael Penix is, like I said, over the course of a full season. Now, I did have the Falcons winning the division. I had them going 10-7. I ended up being incorrect. But that's where we're at right now with them. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Falcons season. How do you see Michael Penix doing next year? We'll find out, how the Falcons can rework their cap situation. And, we'll see what they do in the draft. So that is pretty much it with the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to subscribe to both YouTube channels. Make sure to leave a like and a comment on our videos as well. We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee